Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coach's Corner. I'm here with John Sinclair, our Chief Movement Officer at Seven Movements. And of course, I'm the co-founder of Seven Movements, Dan Tatton. And this is the show where we answer questions from the community. Oh, I'm here with a little bit of a delay there on YouTube. So, John, welcome again.
Thanks for having me, bud.
We have some cool questions that you're going to like today. Because
Okay.
they're kind of right up your alley. So first question was talking about young athletes. And so they've got a young hockey player looking to never really exercise before, looking for recommendations of how to get started and should they be hiring a coach and just kind of how to go about it.
Yeah, if you're only playing hockey and you're not playing any other sports, like depending on the age of the athlete, it's always great to have a coach to help you through. However, if they're between the ages of like 5 and 10, it's best to get them involved in other sports. And so whether it be, a martial art or doing something a little bit different, I always like, coupling hockey and soccer together for really young athletes. And then in the summertime, having them play baseball. I think those are great skill sets to learn to help develop your hockey game, but I don't think there's any replacement for playing a multitude of sports. I think it is the way to go and the most effective way that you can help develop your kid.
Yeah, I like
Now,
that.
if you are a 14, if you're, in your teens and looking to, get a little bit stronger and do things a little bit more specific, then it does help to have a coach who has a background in athlete development. So a degree in physical education or kinesiology, someone that's had experience developing kids' skill sets, because it's not just going to the gym and working out. Like our job is as a coach, that's primarily who I see and I work with every day is kids that are in middle school and high school. And our job is to make them better athletes, not make them better players. So
Love that. So make the case for, because I know parents get conflicting information on this, and you know how it is in Canada with hockey, and you got kids playing year round now. So make the case to parents of why should they be getting their kid involved in multiple sports at a younger age? What's kind of the argument you would make on that side of things?
the biggest argument is they don't get burned out from the sport that they're playing. So that's number one. Two would be that you're only working on specific motor patterns that the body learns. So if you think of a motor pattern and a task makes up a skill. And so if you think of like all the skills needed to play hockey are very different than all the skills needed to play soccer. What's beneficial for doing different skills and learning different skills is that enhances your overall athleticism and your overall motor development. So how the body develops as an organism, and how it learns how to control the body in time and space, how the brain learns how to problem solve on the fly. So that's what we call our exercise cognition. There are many elements to the development of a human being that are best taught when we allow that athlete to learn on their own. So down in the days where you and I found ways to stay, playful and stay out of trouble by being on the farm or being at the grain elevator, we invented ways to learn how to run and jump and roll and fall and all those things. Now kids don't get that. They don't have the freedom to be able to go out and play. So they need the next best step to them self-discovering what play is like is to get them involved in lots of different sports and lots of different activities.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I mean, the greatest player to ever play the game was a multi-sport athlete. So
yeah,
and he wasn't the biggest, strongest, fastest guy, right?
No.
So
I mean, the thing that we see now is that the best athletes in their sport all played multiple sports. It's
Yeah.
very rare that you see a single sport athlete that only played that and only focused on as that one particular style, and even to go further, only focused on one position, right?
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of kids are getting into. They only are a defenseman, or they only
That's
are a
right.
pitcher, right?
Yeah.
Or they only are a goalie. That those kids don't make it as far as the kids that have played multiple sports with multiple positions and with multiple off seasons. That's pretty much the key. When I moved from Canada to South Florida, I couldn't get over the fact that kids play one sport 365 days a year. Right. The climate allows it, but it doesn't mean that you should.
Right. Yeah. I can't actually think of two. I can only think of one really giant glaring example of a single sport athlete, like Tiger Woods. And it's interesting because his body broke down. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it's kind of interesting.
I mean, that was part of it, but he also had a maniacal approach to his training.
Right.
And he was obsessive compulsive with getting better. Right. And so you need that drive, but his drive was a little too much. So, there's stories where, he was doing rehab and, they'd say, okay, well, do 5 sets of leg press for your knee after his ACL injury and stress fracture. And he would turn that 5 sets into 20 sets. Right. So, he was one of the type of people that could not stop, and that's not a good thing.
Right. All right. Thank you, John. That's awesome. I think I know who that question was coming from, and I know you just answered it beautifully for them. So that was really,
that's a bit of a nuanced answer to try and do in a short period of time. In fact, for the Institute of Motion, I just finished this past year writing a 14-hour course for coaches just on how to coach a single sport athlete. So
interesting. Yeah. So that goes, I guess, to their question around coaching, and maybe actually, could you dive into that? Because I think that's important as well, is if you're going to get a coach, what should they be looking for how would you go about, if you had a kid and you're taking them to an exercise coach, let's pretend you don't have the brain that you have, and so you're having to go and outsource this to somebody. What would you recommend people sort of look for and go about the process of hiring somebody?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would be looking for is that coach going to spend time developing other motor skills with you? Or is the intention behind their methodology all about just getting you bigger, stronger, faster?
Strength and conditioning.
Right? Yeah. Because strength and conditioning has its place. I mean, I am a strength and conditioning coach. It's what I spend most of my time doing. But it has to be married with motor skills. And so the stuff we do in the weight room will help you develop the capacity to generate forces, right? But we also need the ability to be able to handle those forces. So there's specific motor skill development that we need to try to focus on. There are a myriad of different skills that make up the package of the athlete. Generally speaking, strength and conditioning kind of deals more with the biomotor qualities. So strength, stamina, suppleness, those kinds of things. Cardiovascular fitness, mobility, activation things, stuff like that. Whereas you want a good complement to that also marries in with, for example, a tennis player. I want to teach you how to catch a ball. Right.
We
because
talked about
now
that.
We're developing the oculomotor system to be able to catch a ball is different than hitting a ball. So we want to have a blend of different motor skills. I commend my sister and her husband on what they're doing for their boys. They're young still. They're 5 and 3, but they're playing hockey. They're riding bicycles. They're learning how to dirt bike. They're going to gymnastics, to swimming, to they're going to move them into martial arts here. They're already snowboarding and skiing. Like, they are involved in everything. And that's when you want to put them in those scenarios, is because that gives them the opportunity to learn motor skills at an early age, which means when they move on to, starting to get into puberty, now their body has the motor skill stuff is set, right? And then now we start to introduce force production and plyometrics and speed play and stuff like that will just come natural to them because they've done it for so many years in so many different ways.
Right. Not to mention they're going to get exposed to a ton of different activities that they might, see that they might fall in love with one of them, and then they can sort of pursue that. We always talk about those people like later in life, the person that bugs you is the one who tends to just be good at anything physically. Like once you go play tennis and they're decent, and they go play basketball, they're decent, and they can almost play anything. They've probably done that from a very, very young age, and why they're such a rounded athlete, right?
Yeah, I picked up tennis. It's a very difficult sport, and I picked it up, but I played 14 different sports in high school. So, and then went on in university, was playing a multitude of sports while in university. And so I think the challenge that we have is that we're now used to, I don't have children, but I think we're used to put them in one thing, let them get good at it. And then when they get sick of it, we'll try something else.
Right.
And in reality, the idea is, you ask a kid to go play now and they don't know how to play.
Yeah. I've told you my sticks in the middle story, right? Did I tell you that story?
No, yes. You should tell the audience this one.
Yeah. So in Canada, a big thing when we go play shinny out on the rink, the way we choose teams is everybody throws their sticks in the middle, and someone goes and throws sticks to each side, and then you go pick up your stick. That's the team that you're on. And I did this with a group of kids and asked them to throw all their sticks in the middle, and they were so confused about how we would do this. And then they wanted to know what position they needed to be playing. I'm like, oh, we're just playing shinny, just go play. Just not even a thought. And these were probably 10, 11-year-olds. So it's quite interesting to me, because that was just so second nature to us growing up, of like, there didn't need to be any structure to our game at all.
That's right.
It was just like, go play. And now they don't have that. They just don't have that exposure to that.
Right. And that's a good example of now those kids, everything that they've learned to this point has been structured. Right. And so, when we were growing up, if you were watching hockey in the 80s and the 90s, you didn't need to see the name bar on the back of the jersey, right? You identified that player by his style of skating, right? Like there was no mistaking Paul Coffey. There was no mistaking, Steve Yzerman. There was no mistaking Joe Sakic. You just knew by the way in which they skated, right? Yeah. But now you can't tell anybody apart. There's a few here and there, like
some super elite.
You can definitely tell Connor McDavid from everybody else on the ice because he's the best skater in the NHL. But for the vast majority of the players in the NHL, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Right. And so they all play the same, and they all came from playing the same kind of structured hockey. Right. And it's happening in all sports where we're trying to teach everybody to run the same, and nobody has their style. Right. And so that style is I call it their athletic footprint, right? Or their athletic fingerprint. And that is developed through play. That is developed through self-discovery. That is how they fine-tune their motor skill system to allow them to get the task done. And that's what we need to get back into, is teaching kids to find their style of throwing a ball, their style of hitting a ball, their style of running. Right. And then we can fine tune things to make them more efficient. So we don't change the way they do things. Right. Yeah. We just make them more efficient, more effective. We don't deconstruct all those years of development because you want to do something different as a tennis coach or as a baseball coach or as a hockey coach. You don't do those things. You let them find their way. Like Wayne Gretzky had a very unconventional way of skating, but if you actually watch him, he's effortless, and he could stay on the ice forever because he had a good cardiovascular system, but also he didn't waste any any strides.
Right.
He could glide and not take on any friction on the ice because his feet were always in a perfect position, you know? And so those are the things that we want to try and teach, but those things really should be learned already at an earlier age.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, what a cool discussion. And I think, like say, they'll get a lot out of this. I'll go to our second question, and then we've only got 2 questions today. So we're getting a ton of weight loss questions, but one really sort of stuck out to me that I thought was pretty relevant. And it went something like this. It was asking you specifically, John. They're basically saying I'm a chronic over worker outer. They work out too much and they're trying to work out to lose weight. And everything they've listened to from us indicates to them they need to slow down a bit. But they're worried, like if they slow down, they're not working hard enough. How are they actually going to lose weight? So what they're looking for is, John, make the argument to me of why me not going to my fitness class 7 days a week is actually going to have a better impact on me, my ability to lose weight than not.
Okay. So let's look at it from the real base calculation. And I'm not going to go calories in, calories out with you, because that is one that's often synonymous with weight loss. What I'm going to talk about is training and adaptation. Okay. So there's going to be, when I say training, under parentheses in it, you're going to write stress, right? And then you're going to have plus, or stress equals adaptation. And so the amount of stress that I put into the body is either positive or negative. Okay. Positive stress, we call that eustress, EU stress. And then negative stress, we call that distress, right? And there's a balance that needs to happen there. Okay. Any stress we enter into the body is going to determine how it adapts to that stress. So let's say, for example, you're exercising 1 hour every single day, going to your favorite exercise class. That training stress is going to accumulate. So you only have a certain amount of stress that your body can handle. And then we're going to either have a positive adaptation or a negative adaptation to it. Physical stress is only one of them, right? So we have mental and emotional stress, right? So that's all the cognitive, all the emotional things that happen to you throughout the day. That's all the biological things that are happening in the body as a result of the emotional stress that you're carrying. You have cognitive stress. So if you're in a job that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of problem solving, that's a stress to the body as well. And then we also have social stress, right? So we have, whether you're in isolation, not getting to see your loved ones like we went through COVID, or if you are in a big group environment and you don't get along with your clique, that's a social stress as well. So if we take all those stressors and we drop them into one bucket, they're more negative than they are positive, and then we add more physical stress to that stressed system, then the adaptation will actually be negative. How your body codes that, if I use the word code, is I've taken all that stress and now my body needs to adapt to it. Well, the best way for me to do that is to kind of shut you down, right? And so if I have too much sympathetic stress, or as we call fight or flight stress, which is the negative, kind of like the yang of the stress world, if you have yin and yang, right? If there's too much sympathetic stress, then the body wants to shut itself down. And one of the ways it does that is not allowing you to perform so well. But a mechanism of negative stress is storing fat, because it's a survival instinct, right? If we balance out your training with recovery, an active recovery, and most importantly, sleep, right, then your body will balance out that stress and you can tolerate more exercise, right? And so that's why we say, my good friend Brandon Marcello always says, nutrition and sleep is like pre-covery. If you don't have great quality and quantity of sleep, your body cannot tolerate as much physical stress. If you eat really non-nutritious foods or calorie dense foods that don't have a lot of nutrition value to it, you also cannot tolerate as much physical stress. So if we look at it from that lens, you have to really ask yourself then, well, is it that I'm doing too much? Am I overtraining the body? Most would say, and my dear friend Brandon Marcello would say, you can't overtrain the body, but you can certainly under recover it. And I think that's where our society is kind of going more towards, is that we're trying to do things that are too hard on an already stressed system. It's not that we don't have the capacity to be able to tolerate it. It's that we don't spend enough time slowing down, to your point, Dan.
Yeah.
Is getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, going for a nice little walk, just to kind of unwind. Doing all those little 7 movement things that we've been talking about for years,
right,
that accumulate over the day that help mitigate some of the stress that you're going through. Getting into a behavior regimen of making sure that you are doing things that promote healing of tissues, healing of the mind, healing of your spirit. Those things go a long way into your body's ability to recover. Because if I can balance out the real challenging stresses in my body with active and passive recovery strategies, then that creates this balance, or as we call in science class, homeostasis.
right.
And if I'm at homeostasis, I'm at the optimum opportunity for adaptation to occur.
Right.
So by creating that balance, that's when weight loss will occur. If I'm always here and my teeter-totter kind of looks like this, then you're going to hit your plateaus, right?
Right.
And sometimes that's just changing your nutrition too drastically.
Yeah.
So you could start with a diet plan, right? And you change your nutrition so drastically that it changes your biochemistry. Boom, that throws you like this.
Yeah.
And so then it's not calories in, calories out anymore. We haven't even talked about calories out, but your calories in has decreased so far that it throws you in flux, and your body sees that as stress. I'm starving myself, right? So what is the nervous system's response to starvation? Flight, go find food, right?
Yeah.
So that is a negative response to the nervous system. So no adaptation is going to occur under those circumstances. It's just not going to happen. So the best way we optimize your performance, if weight loss is your performance goal, is to make sure that we balance out all your stressors, right? And so there are stressors that contribute to that funnel of total stress. And we have to identify those and then look to changing some of those behaviors that become the stressors that lead to your total amount of stress.
Yeah, I love that. And I know the person who asked this question, very detailed, and this you're describing her very well. Is like, this is someone who is has challenges in slowing down, and is like, well, if I'm going to lose weight, I'm just going to work out 3 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it'll come off. But it's not happening, and you get to that burnout point. So you want to get to the point where you can make those exercise sessions as effective as possible and have that positive adaptation that you're talking about, which is really awesome.
And there's like the best professional athletes in the world. You hear this term load management now, right?
Yeah.
And load management for it was on the ticker today, is how do you handle the training load of James Harden and Joel Embiid with the Philadelphia 76ers? How do you balance out the amount of stress those guys are going through being on the court for a full 60 minutes? You can't do it over an 82 game season. So the coaches know how to manage the total amount of stress. So how long they're on the court, how many miles they've run up and down the court. They manage all that so that these folks don't break down. Like, to have 2 stars like that with that amount of power is a significant loss if you lose either one of them. Right. So managing that stress is what they're doing, right? They're managing the training load and their tolerance for stress so that they can go out on the court and be successful and ultimately bring the team a championship. It's the same thing in your life. It's just that you're having to manage, or your coach manages that stress level for you. And that's what we do for you, is we manage how much stress can you tolerate on any given day I manage it myself. We have biofeedback that we use. I use heart rate variability as my key diagnostic tool. And that tells me how much stress can I put through my system today, Johnny? And then that helps inform me the type of exercise that I'm able to do that day. And then we teach you how to learn how your body is responding to stress with your respiration, with your heart rate, with your energy levels, with your mood. All those things are symptoms of the amount of stress that goes into the body, and what the output is going to be is the symptoms like mood and sleep and energy level and heart rate and respiration. Those are the things that we can observe. That is what your physiology is telling you as to whether or not you're in homeostasis or not.
Yeah, I like that. And I just like that idea of, it's why we have our 7 movements wellness plan has the 4 buckets, right?
That's right.
Because you can't just focus on one and expect that outcome at the top, because it just doesn't work that way because of all the reasons you just laid out. So awesome. This was a great episode, John. I think you gave some gems here, so we'll share this far and wide. Thank you again for your time today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks probably, because next week you're going to be away. We'll have one of the other 7 movements coaches on. Give them some airtime.
Lovely. Beautiful. They're smarter than me anyway.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Take care, buddy.